Okay, in that case, then I can call the meeting to order at 7:09. And if everybody had a chance to look over the minutes from the last meeting, I just need a motion to approve and somebody to second.
Motion to approve.
Okay, that was
Second.
Michael Anderson.
Doug second.
I think you caught Doug seconding. So now we are ready to turn it over to Debbie, and we all have our copies that she sent us, ready to peruse them.
Thank you, Regina. But before we get into the next sections, I just wanted to show you just briefly, I'll put this on the screen, what the results, this is what, once we get results, right now there are only 8 of you all, I'm sure, that answered as a good test. But this is basically what it will look like. We'll get all the questions. It will give you the addresses of everybody who responded. This is the question about ranking, what's most important to the city. So we'll get a good read on, the answers to these questions, how many people favored which position. And it also gives you the percentages, the actual scores of what percentage of people felt ranked financial responsibilities first. And so you'll get a lot of information. That's what I like about SurveyMonkey. You can continuously look at your updates and see exactly how people are responding to your questions. The other thing too is I think it's a nice simple format that once we do close it and have the final results, you can post it on social media, you can post it on the website, so you can provide people a lot of information, which I think is kind of nice. It's a good educational tool too. This is actually, I think as we go through this, the actual comments, any other comments, you'll get a whole lot of these, I think, and these are very informative because people tend to, because it's anonymous, they will provide you, good feedback and good comments. I can print this without the comments. You can either tell it to print with comments or without. So for the public consumption, you'll probably not want to include, all the comments that people have. Some cry out to be edited, I can tell you that much. And others are very actually insightful and provide you a lot of good feedback. So I just wanted you to have some idea of exactly, what you're going to get when we're done with this survey. So,
Nice.
Very nice.
okay. And Bonnie is on vacation. She will not be here tonight. So there's nobody except Mike Foreman's here to keep us out of trouble, right? So I'm going to share. Let's see here. Get it up. Okay. Is that big enough? Can people see that?
Yep, it's on the big screen.
Okay. So tonight, we're going to actually deal with 3 relatively short sections, articles of the code, of the charter. But they're important ones. They're related to personnel. And again, my mantra, let's keep it simple. Less is better. You're going to have the whole administrative code to deal with departments, offices, agencies. So we only want the things in the charter that we really, want to make sure that cannot be changed, because remember how difficult it is to change these. They don't get changed all that often. So I'll go through these sections. So the first sort of general statement is that the council shall, and this is a shall, adopt by ordinance an administrative code defining the responsibilities of all the departments, offices, agency, as it deems necessary and proper for the effective and efficient conduct of city affairs. So basically, we've talked about this before. If the charter is approved, we'll have a certain period of time that'll be identified in the charter for the administrative code, which is an ordinance, to be developed and adopted by council. So, and that's part of the Home Rule Charter. You have to have this administrative code. So that will come after the charter is adopted. Michael, did you have if you have anything about the code or any comments that you want to make along the way, please feel free to interrupt me.
Thank you. I may in section 5.2.
Okay. So the general provisions basically just say all existing departments, offices, and agencies that are in existence at the date of the enactment of the charter, unless they're contrary to the charter, shall continue to operate until the council provides otherwise. So basically, all the departments stay the same, except where the charter has made a specific change. For instance, we talked last week about the treasurer and controller would no longer, be elected positions in the city. So that would take effect. But anything else relative to departments, offices, agencies continues as it does on the date of the enactment. However, that does not, restrict the council, because the council may establish at any time they can create departments, offices, agencies, as long as they're not in contrary to the charter, and they may prescribe all the functions and duties again for those departments. And then the other general provision, and we decided this at the last meeting, that all departments, offices, and agencies shall be under the direction and supervision of the city manager. So those are, the three kind of general provisions relative to personnel. So I'll stop for a minute and see if there are any comments, if that seems like the intent of the commission, or if there's anything that anyone has to say.
What's different? I apologize but those three, A, B, and C, the general provisions, what's different about that than what exists now?
It's not different than what is, well, let me take them one at a time. So A says basically whatever is in place now continues to be in place, unless the charter has changed it. And like the example I used was if the controller and treasurer. B says that the council can create in the future, any additional departments. C is different in that the city manager will be directing and supervising all the departments. Right now, the third class city code assigns those departments to specific council people. So the 5 council members all head up a department. So C is specifically different than the third class city code.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. The second one is a personnel system. And this basically says that the council shall enact and maintain a personnel ordinance, and that ordinance would be based upon merit, include equal opportunity, and shall not conflict with any statutes heretofore enacted by the General Assembly affecting the rights, benefits, or working conditions of employees. So this section really requires the city council to enact and maintain a personnel ordinance. Michael, you said you have some comments around that.
I'm just looking at the wording of it in terms of just maybe being a little more specific and clarifying with the heading of a personnel system. Um, Some thoughts out loud would be that the council shall establish, again, I'm just thinking out loud in terms of feedback and input. The council shall establish through enactment. I mean, again, I don't want to reword what you're already saying. I just maybe want to just provide some clarifying language that council has to establish the system through an enactment of an ordinance, a personnel ordinance. Um, So you will enact an ordinance, but you're doing that, you know, by establishing a personnel system through enactment of an ordinance. You type very well, very quickly, better than me.
Lots of years of practice.
Must be. So yeah, council shall establish a personnel system through enactment of an ordinance or enactment of an ordinance. And, based upon merit, um, then in 5.3, you talk about the merit system. And then you also mention equal employment opportunity. Um, so I don't know if it's to be redundant or not to say based upon a merit system that you're going to elaborate on in 5.3 and equal employment opportunity, which then the rest is okay, fine. So again, this is just clarifying language that you're establishing a personnel system through enactment of an ordinance, and it's based upon a merit system and equal employment opportunity. Then we get into 5.3. All hiring, employment, and promotions of city employees shall be made solely based on merit, based upon a merit system. Just maybe I'm being redundant by saying merit system in the text where you already have it in the heading, but I'm just trying to give it context of what you mean by a merit system.
I don't think,
Okay. Sometimes I'm my own worst critic. Based upon a merit system through assessment of their, and again, I don't know if it means respective abilities, assessment of,
can we
okay.
apply that to new hires?
You mean a new sentence?
Um,
All hiring employees.
right now it says all hiring, employment and promotions.
Question on 5.2, you specifically say not to conflict with the PA General Assembly. What about federal laws? Should that be included in there as well?
Yeah, every municipality is required to follow specific federal laws that affect the rights, benefits, or working conditions of employees. That would be protected class and civil rights and the like. However, it is at least in the Pennsylvania Constitution, the language in the beginning of the PA Constitution does reflect what's stated in federal law, codified federal law, with regard to prohibiting discrimination based upon specific protected classes that are, spelled out in codified statute of federal government. I think it's the codified. I'm not specific about what it is. Bonnie would know if she were here.
Right.
Affecting, the rights, benefits. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a good point that it's not just state law, but also federal statute by Pennsylvania General Assembly and federal statutes and federal law, either way, or working condition of employees. Okay, so then merit system, all hiring, employment, and promotions of city employees shall be made solely based upon a merit system through the assessment of abilities, knowledge, skills, performance, and relevant experience. Okay, through the assessment of abilities, knowledge, skills, performance relevant experience and potential for greater responsibility as demonstrated by examination or other evidence of competence. Or, okay, let's see, or other evidence of competence. Well, when you say other evidence of competence, if you're not strictly civil service, like paid fire, police, where you take an exam, a written exam, uh, oral exam, agility, psychological, etc. I guess, and maybe the administrative code will define or other evidence of competence or competency.
I think with
Again,
this, I'm sorry, I think with this too envisions, I would think is that other than civil service employees, you may not take an exam, but you would have to provide maybe certifications or other types of evidence of competency in the area for which you're being employed. So it might not be
fair enough.
a per se an exam, it may be some other evidence.
Some other mechanism or some other instrument that would measure one's ability and fitness to perform the job. So, okay, fair enough. And again, this is a framework, it's a skeleton that will have greater definition and more substance in the administrative code based upon the provisions that are in the charter itself. So then 5.4 collective bargaining, say no personnel related ordinances, resolutions, policies, or procedures shall conflict with the laws of the Commonwealth related to collective bargaining rights, collective bargaining rights, and well, I guess it's general to say related to collective bargaining. Okay. Then we get into civil service. All fire and police employees shall be hired and promoted according to the provisions of the city's civil service rules and regulations that you have in place and are normally adopted by an ordinance. So they become literally the local law of the municipality. Okay. Then we have
Yeah, the one comment I wanted to make about civil service, and I am not recommending that that the city do this, but having talked with, Mike Palumbo and the labor attorneys about this on many occasions, some rural communities can and sometimes do write their own provisions for hiring, employment, and don't necessarily follow third-class city civil service provisions. I would not recommend that. I guess the city of Pittsburgh, for instance, and I know they're a second-class city, but I guess they have their own system for fire, police employees and hiring promotions and otherwise. So you could, I guess my point is you could write your own system, but based on the history and, the tradition and the current situation, I would just say that you're gonna follow the city's civil service rules and regs as they currently are and as amended later, from time to time by council. That's the only point I wanted to make is because you're home rule, you could have your own system, but I wouldn't recommend it. And I think Bonnie would say the same thing. Because you'd have to write your own system, basically.
fair enough. Now the, excuse me, the prohibitions, I just wanted to see if something extended to the next page. So basically what you're saying is that, and this applies to me too as a state employee, even though I'm at will, but I cannot take any active part in any political campaign or solicit political contributions or services for any city public office. Okay, what B says is something I was going to suggest about no city employee shall hold any city public office or any city political party office while serving as a city employee. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So that seems to be very common, and I believe able to be upheld, through case law. All right, and plus, okay, so C, no person shall solicit political contributions or services while at work for the city or on city property at any time. That's common as well. And then no city employee shall accept gifts from any persons or entities who may gain personally from any transaction of the city. That's common also, yes.
What about where would this fall? When council persons and other office holders are soliciting signatures for reelection.
Normally, you cannot do it at City Hall during work hours. It has to be off city publicly owned premises.
All right,
Yeah, and I think we had similar prohibitions for the city, the council members. We had similar that you couldn't solicit or campaign in the city's public offices.
Okay, now, the question of can a city employee during work hours wear a button that says, elect whoever, elect Debbie Grass for city council, for mayor. I think that might be a bit out of bounds, even though people might say, well, I'm exercising my free speech rights. But again, maybe Bonnie can weigh in on this.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I can tell you too, I think what happens more often is people get involved in maybe state or national campaigns and tend to, bring that into the office. And I think it gets a little hazy because you're not talking about a city office or a city political race. You're actually talking about a national race. So I don't know, I don't know if that could be regulated. My advice to my employees was don't do it. Don't put a yard sign, don't do any political, don't engage in any
Right.
political activity. But I don't know if you can really restrict, how far you can restrict people or how far you would want to.
Well, I would consider putting it in and during a legal review of the entire document or this chapter by Bonnie, see whether or not it sticks or not.
You mean in terms of national and state and
I
national?
would say any election, any political campaign during any election, during work hours.
Yeah, are the
City-
commission members, is that, would you want to see that in the prohibitions?
So they shouldn't wear any type of button supporting any candidates at all while at work.
or
Well, and then I'm wondering, does that belong in the charter, Michael, or is that an administrative code kind of issue?
Well, my gut tells me it can be in the charter, and if it needs elaboration, it could be done in the administrative code. Because once it's left out of the charter and something comes up where there could be an incident, then the charter would literally have to go through a referendum.
Now, is that something that there could be pushback on, like it is infringing on their personal rights?
Yeah, I think there's a two-step thing here. One, is the commission inclined to include that? The members, are you inclined to want to see something like that in the charter? If you are, I'll put a question here for Bonnie to look at the language and see what we can do and what we can't do, what she thinks would hold up and maybe what won't.
I understand why this question is coming up, but I think it would be better in the charter just to keep the focus on the city functions, that you can't use the city building, you can't engage in political activity for a particular candidate for a city office. And then the more particular strictures about, what buttons you can wear for governor or for president, that sort of thing, that can be in the administrative code. Because I agree, I think Regina's onto something. I don't think we need to make make a potential hot button issue in the charter. I think if we stick to the city political activity in the charter itself, that would be best.
Well said, Doug.
Always.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Regina. You get me going. I get thinking about it. Yeah.
Well, and let me review too and see, we have a number of charters that we've been looking at to see if there is restrictive language of some kind that maybe works, for this or not. And again, I'll have a conversation with Bonnie about it. But I mean, it can be a problem. And like I said, I've had that when I was a manager, I definitely had those conversations with my employees about staying out of the fray.
Mhm.
Just because you never know. I mean, you never know what boards you're going to have to work with, and you never know who you're going to have to interact with. And I mean, as a city employee, you have to interact with everybody, no matter what party or what position. So
Mhm.
it's tough. You don't want them to display any particular preference. Put it that
Are we
way.
Right.
gonna, are we gonna add, if you were to add the letter E, would you address paraphernalia, like signage, buttons? etc.?
What kind of buttons?
Any kind of button, any, um,
You mean stating some
Yeah.
position on some social issue?
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it as a question here, so we remember to go back to it.
That seems to me that follows with all the sorts of things that you would say to city employees about, how they can dress, what they can wear, and, all that kind of stuff. It seems more fitting to that than the political
Yeah,
situation.
I've seen it in a personnel
Yes,
ordinance
definitely.
more often
Yes.
than in a charter, but we can do a little research and then come back to that, I think.
Mhm.
And that's all that I have. Again, like I said, with personnel, there's so much other stuff around it, including, what's going to be the administrative code, what's going to be your personnel ordinance, what's going to, take place in collective bargaining and civil service, that I think, this needs to stay relatively simple unless someone has some thoughts about other things that need to be in the ordinance.
The ordinance would also, I think, let me say, a supplement to the administrative code could be personnel policies and procedures.
Right,
What you call administrative manuals
right.
generically. Yeah. Just like you'd have financial policies and other types of policies.
Okay.
Probably
And then,
even civil
some-
service rules and regs would be part of the administrative manuals also.
right.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
So I looked at a couple of the charters, and some of them don't deal with the departments at all, and that's okay. You don't really have to, because you do have ordinances that set up the departments and establish the positions. And like we just talked about, you've got civil service, you've got rules, civil service rules and regs, you've got collective bargaining. So you already have a lot of stuff around, especially police and fire. But I found some of these sections that I thought we might at least take a look at, because there are some things that are spelled out in some of the home rule charters that I thought might have some value and that you might want to take a look at. The first is on the police department, and relative to the police chief, because it's sort of a position that is not a part of the union, may or may not be civil service qualified. Some chiefs are, some are not. So I thought some of this language, again, had some value. So the police chief, appointment, qualifications, and tenure. The police chief shall be appointed by the manager with the advice and consent of council. Now, that's different than now. I'm not sure how you handle it, but the third class city code allows the mayor to recommend and the council to appoint. I believe that's the updated version. Initially, the mayor had complete control. I think the updated version of the third class city code really requires the council to do it, but the mayor recommends. In this instance, the police, what we're saying is the police chief will be appointed by the manager with the advice and consent of council. So the manager kind of recommends, and then the council would approve it.
One
So,
variation, excuse me, Debbie, one variation that's presented
no,
here
go ahead.
is that the third class city code today, as it exists, requires first for the mayor, before making an appointment, to draw from the current ranks of the police department to nominate, I'll use the word nominate, a police chief. If that is not feasible or it doesn't pan out that way, then the mayor has the opportunity to look outside of city employment. What this is saying is it's shifting that from the mayor to the manager based upon, B, management experience and background in law enforcement. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's a shift from within the ranks by the mayor to nominate with council consent to the manager. And the administrative code, I think, would draw upon greater substance and elaboration and looking at what management experience means and a background of, excuse me, an employment of law enforcement. Excuse me a minute.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction, Michael. I really, when I was pulling from the various charters, I was trying to, make that distinction. I think that's important because right now the third class city code, as Michael said, does say that you appoint from within unless no one meets your, threshold qualifications, then you can go outside of the department. By adopting this language, the person appointed would not necessarily have to be from the department. It could be a person that has the requisite management experience and background of employment and law enforcement. So I think that deserves a little bit of thought and discussion because that is different from currently, the way it's currently done.
It
And then the
says
other,
here, go ahead,
ahead.
please, Debbie. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Please.
I was just gonna say the next three items are pretty consistent with the way that things are done now. The chief is appointed for an indefinite period. There's no term, but the chief can be removed for any reason with a majority of the council. Now, go ahead, Mike.
The third class city code today, as it exists, it basically says the chief of police shall be designated by the mayor from within the ranks, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just, reiterating or being redundant in what I just said. Again, using the term designated by the mayor. Now, interpretively, that may mean that it's the mayor, or is it council that consents to it? I think normally the mayor certainly has the exclusivity to designate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look further under powers of council because I don't see either police, whether there's consent or not by council. But I know it is for the police, for the fire chief, yes. That's definitely council consent. Appointment, 1201. Appointment, the mayor, by and with approval of consent of council, shall
Yes.
appoint the fire chief. Well, I guess you would know that because you have one. But I'm going to look as we go on into council and their appointment power. But again, this charter, Go ahead,
My
Doug.
memory is that in the time that I've been here, we've had two new police chiefs and that council approved. The mayor chose, but recommended, and council then approved that, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And I
Okay.
think I had a discussion with Bill Gamble because we ran into this in Johnstown, and he was the one that said my understanding is there's language in the updated third class city code, but I don't have it in front of me, Michael, you do, so you would know better than I. But yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, and I believe, Michael, you would agree, in a home rule charter, you can make that decision based on the language in the charter of how that is done.
Correct.
You don't
Correct.
have to go with the third class city code.
Correct. You are not wedded to the third class city code language on the appointment of a fire, police, other department heads. It could be through the manager with consent of council.
So
That's what this is proposing.
right. So
Yeah.
what do you guys think about that? Do you comfortable with the manager with advice and consent of council? We did, I believe in the last week's discussion, we did give the manager the ability to appoint the department heads with advice and consent of council. So this is consistent with the city manager section.
Hey Debbie, I have a question on D. And it's a hypothetical question. What if there was a situation where the city manager did not want to remove the police chief or any other position, but 3 members of council do? Can they just override the city manager, so to speak?
The way this is written and the way we wrote the city manager section is that the city manager would make that decision or recommendation to council, and then council would act on it. So I think it would have to originate with the city manager. Based on the way this is written, that's a good question. We may be able to make that more clear depending on what your thoughts are.
Be mindful that you're not wedded to 3. If you want to make it a super majority, you could say 4. And I'm not saying do it. I'm just letting you know that you could say 4 council members if they want to
That's-
remove.
That's a good point.
Rather than it being done on a whim or through a faction of council.
Yeah, I just think that somewhere along the line of that the city council should have more power than, ultimately have more power than the city manager.
Yeah.
And that's only.
So what, yeah,
There's the
I
conflict.
kind of agree with that the police chief may be removed by the city manager. Can we just say, or by
Yeah, put or in there. Yeah.
By a
council?
super majority of council.
I kind of do like the idea of the super majority.
I don't like the term for any reason.
Super majority.
No, he said he doesn't like the term for any reason.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, we can just take that out. Just say the may be removed with the consent of at least 4 members of council.
Yeah.
Any reason could be you got on my nerves today.
Got on my nerves today, you're out.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a super majority, that's gotta be a compelling reason.
Yeah, I'm gonna put with the consent. Yeah, someone may, I mean, we know what we mean, but I'm gonna put 4 here. So we're very clear.
Take least out.
With the kiss,
If you take-
just make it a flat 4, not
Make it
at
flat
least
4,
4.
not
It could be 5.
Oh, least 4 or more.
You're planning on having a 5-member council in this
Oh, yeah,
charter?
that's right.
Yes.
Currently, yeah, a 5-member council.
I forgot
And
that.
that's why
number.
I've been using the 3 for as a majority, just so it's very
Right.
clear what we're doing. So how is everyone, what else? The other sections, is everyone okay with the language? Do we need to discuss that any longer?
I'm comfortable with not putting and it's not, I mean, it's not really a restriction in the third class city code because the third class city code gives the option of going outside of the department. This just says, you know, you don't have to stay within the department. And I think that's good. I think that people will still look there probably first, but we want a well-qualified person in that position, whether or not he or she has been on the police force already.
Yeah, and
So
you could run into a situation, and again, we just ran into this in Johnstown where they had to prove that the police chief was, or that there was nobody in the current ranks that would be able to meet their qualifications.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to go outside the department. And so the union, because, you know, the officers were in the union actually objected because they had gone outside. So the city had to jump through a few hoops to prove that there were reasons that they were doing that. So I think, as you said, Doug, the person best qualified should be appointed either within or without or outside the department.
Is there anything in here about the appointment of an interim police chief?
Not in the, no, not in this section. We did not, I did not address it, but we could.
It's just a thought. Seeing what the commission members think.
Well,
We'll get through here and we can hold that for a minute because we could add that if they think, although the highest ranking officers typically moved into that position, but we could put something in here that designated who would be. I worry about that because that kind of binds the city manager and the council to something that may or may not be the right move. I do worry a little bit about that.
Well, I said in the context of an interim because the resigning police chief has left and the city hasn't yet been able to appoint a new police chief, given maybe the quickness of the departure of the police chief, where it could just be a 2-week notice, and the city needs more time than that to go out and recruit another full-time, professional police chief. So, and if you are thinking about putting it in here, or at least think that you could state that it would be for a fixed period of time, and may be extended with council consent.
Well,
Or not.
that would be a city manager appointment, wouldn't it, to an
I
interim?
believe so. I believe so. But it would, again, be, I'll call it term limited or time limited, for maybe up to, I mean, again, I'm just throwing this out here, a number, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 3 months. And if that is passed, if that time frame passes, then council would have to allow the manager to extend it, maybe on a month-by-month basis. Again, as I say these things, I don't want to get too complicated. I don't want to get too involved. I just want to allow an opportunity for there not to be a void in police leadership when a police chief leaves for any reason, or unfortunately, or God forbid, leaves because of a sudden death, like you, Debbie, we experienced that in Aliquippa, or
Right.
for some infraction that you had no choice but to terminate the person.
Right.
When
I guess my inclination is that the city manager would basically control that. And it's not all, it's sometimes difficult to recruit a new chief. So we don't know the time limits or the time that it might take. And we're sitting here trying to figure that out. I don't know that we know, sitting here, how long it might take to recruit the right person.
Well, Debbie, you and I know that we're a half inch away from getting somebody hooked up, and something happens that it all falls apart.
Exactly. That's why I worry about putting too many restrictions here.
Well, under C, though, it says that the chief shall be appointed for an indefinite period. Indefinite period could be 1 day.
Hmm.
So if you appointed somebody interim and then until you get a new chief, it
Right.
have to be a definite number. Because basically you can remove them at will. The city manager can upon acceptance by council.
Yeah. Let's, okay.
I'm not interested in adding myself, getting into what happens, about an interim one. Again, I think that can be spelled out in the administrative code. And yeah, I mean, you can just keep thinking one more thing after another. So I'm going to go back to Debbie's mantra. Simple
Keep it
is better.
simple.
Yeah,
Keep it simple if we can. Yeah.
yeah.
Because
I
we
mean, I
can't.
agree with what you're saying, Michael. I can envision all kinds of scenarios that, you're gonna, but that's the thing. Almost every situation is going to be different, and common sense would be that you're going to have somebody designated as the head if the police chief is gone for whatever reason. So
Fair enough. Sure.
yeah.
So we've taken care of the police chief position in 6.1. Again, I thought it was good language to have so that we knew how that position would be filled. 6.2, I put in, and again, I got this from, I don't remember whose charter it was, but I saw this in one of the charters that we looked at. So the positions, and again, this is a departure from the third class city code, because as you know, the council appoints the police employees to their position and promotes them. This basically assigns that they still have to follow the civil service rules and regs. You still have to have the rule of 3, and you still have to follow, the law. But this allows the city manager to appoint and promote candidates in accordance with the civil service rules and regs. So it takes council out of it altogether. And I've seen this in a number of the charters where the city manager form of government. But again, this is a decision for the commission to make. And then the B basically even goes a little further. It basically says that all the provisions in the third class city code that confer the powers or duties on the mayor or council relative to the police department would be exercised by, and such duties performed by the city manager. This basically takes the council out of everything except the appointment of the chief.
I think that currently council approves all hiring,
Right,
right?
right. Because and your civil service rules and regs probably establish that the council does that hiring. In a
So you
home
think
rule,
that would be in there anyways? Is that what you're
no,
saying?
what I'm saying is in a home rule charter, you can take council out of those appointments and just have them, flow through the manager. So they would not have to be done by the city council. And not, like I said, in the manager forms of government, you see that a lot. They still have to follow all the rules and regs, all the testing, all the exams, the whole bit. But the council doesn't get involved in anything but the chief.
I think that we're a small enough organization, a small enough city that we should keep the provision. I'm not, I'm 100% behind the kind of shift that's going here to the city manager. Because I think that will streamline things and make it a little bit more, the chain of command a little bit more clear. But I like the idea still of council, that the city manager needs to bring those people to council and have them approved there, rather than just say the city manager does whatever. Did we write that into the other offices?
I'm looking at that right now. We had that
I know we were saying the city manager
Yeah,
does the department heads.
Yeah, let me go, let me do this.
I bet it isn't there, because now that I'm
No.
thinking about it, right?
Let me,
I don't know.
so what we had is, can you guys see this, the new?
It's up.
Okay. Let me get it bigger maybe. Okay, what we did in C was we have that the city manager, one of the duties is to appoint or remove all other city employees.
Yeah.
So we have the appointment or removal of department directors with the consent of council. But we did have, and that was one of the reasons I wrote the section that we're talking about here, is because we did have in C that the city manager would appoint or remove all other city employees. Michael Foreman, you've probably seen it work both ways in
Yes,
your
I have.
experience.
Yes, I have. With respect to the issue at hand, I've seen more where the manager will nominate or will recommend the appointment of specific police officers based upon a list of 3 that have gone through a civil service procedure, and council normally makes a decision based on what the manager is recommending. Point being that, as Doug is saying, council does have a direct role to play in an official capacity by endorsing and voting affirmatively to appoint police officers recommended by the city manager. Conversely, the manager may recommend the appointment of candidate number 2, then candidate number 3, then candidate number 1, assuming that there's 3 openings. And council may say, well, we like 1 and 3 better, so it's 1, 3, and 2. So that's how it could play out. And, so again, it gives the manager the ability to recommend and council the decision-making role to endorse that, or, well, I'll say generically, to endorse it one way or another.
In some ways, it relieves, council members, because as you said, Doug, it's a small town. The candidates a lot of the times. Does it make sense to take the council members, out of the process? And it's purely, by testing and scores and otherwise. But again, what this language is consistent with what we wrote in the city manager, but we can change both of them if you think that it
Yeah,
In a
I
city-
think,
In a city manager form of government, typically, the department heads are the only thing that the councils get involved in. However, if you're not comfortable with that, we should talk through that.
I thought, and this, just a comment, that initially we wanted to give the city manager more responsibility, for lack of a better term. But then what it seems like now is he has to get recommendations and consent from council. So now it's almost like you're giving the city that position more authority, but yet you're taking it away from it with the other hand. Because no matter what he does, he still has to get consent from council.
Well, the way it's written now, only for department heads.
Okay, all right.
But again, that's what's being proposed. That's your decision about how you want to finally write that.
I think there should be some balance because you never know down the road if you get somebody that's gonna be out of control and abuse the power. There
Well,
should-
then you
check and-
fire the city manager.
right.
No, I mean, that's the solution.
All right.
If you think the city manager is not making good decisions, you fire the city manager.
Right.
Sort of like a
That's all.
baseball team, right? You fire the manager.
Yeah.
The
Am
team's
I
not
looking
working
at
well.
this wrong? Where's Doug Carson when you need him to comment?
He's in there.
I'm right here. I'm listening, but the airwaves are filled. I don't want to bust in.
Am I wrong, Doug?
What were you? I didn't hear the comment. I lost it in the stream. Your comment, Michael.
I was
Oh,
thinking,
about the who has the power.
Yeah.
No, I think you're right. And I'm sitting here debating with myself. I'm definitely comfortable with city heads, police chief, all the head positions
okay,
having to be both city manager and then consent of council. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm now wondering, do I want that to extend the whole way? But I guess I'll admit that for the most part, not even for the most part, that's really kind of been, the word I would use is perfunctory. The various council members in charge of the particular departments have said to the council, this is what we're going to do. And then, but I can think of one change we did make recently that it was good to have although again, that was department heads. So that would have been with council anyways. So I think I can live with department heads as we've done all the way through, as Debbie's done all the way through. But if somebody else on the commission felt strongly that it should be city manager and council, I would not object to that. But I think I'm going to say I can go with just the city manager and consent just for the heads.
okay.
The thing that I don't know that I feel strongly either way, but the thing that I like about having the council approve, it's like having a board of directors, right? You're approving all the hiring and the firing. And the thing that does for the manager is gives them backup and support. It doesn't have to be a thing where you don't trust them. It's more that you're providing support. If there's an issue, then you are there to kind of be the backup, be the support.
Well, let me suggest this because I've seen this too. What if the city manager makes the appointment, but reports those appointments to council? So basically, the city manager would be required to say, these 2 or 3 people from this list for this reason have been appointed to these positions. Is that how?
Yeah, I did that a lot as an administrator. I would make a decision. Did I want the school board to vote on this matter? Or did I want just to report what I had done? And then if they felt something was amiss, then they had to raise it as opposed to having to decide, make the decision themselves. I like that. To me, that's a bit of a compromise here. And that would be for any positions under the heads. And then the heads would still be consent of council. Right? That's what you're saying, Debbie.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is basically the department directors, chiefs would have to be appointed by council, recommended by the manager, appointed by council. All
Yeah.
other employees would just be, the manager would be required to advise the council and report, who was being, because I don't know that you want to get involved in every, and I know what you're saying, Bethany, but even with the board of directors, the executive director typically just reports to the boards most of the hires, unless it's a high level hire. I don't know. Is everyone comfortable with that? We write some language like that.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I think so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is just a sort of a given, but I thought it doesn't hurt to have it in there. The police officers employed by the city shall have all the powers and authority conferred on police officers of all municipalities of all classes by action of the General Assembly. So basically, any power that any officer has in the Commonwealth is conferred on police officers of the city. And then this 6.4, I know we've talked about a little bit over time about the ability to use part-time police officers. And one of the things I know that you all have brought to my attention is there some question about the ability to hire part-time officers. Now, this doesn't mean that you're required to, but it does give you the ability clearly to appoint, and it would be the city manager, appointing part-time police officers in accordance with the civil service rules and regs. So you would have to have it in your civil service rules and regs adopted by the council. And then the city manager would be able to appoint part-time officers. And I know that's been a topic off and on for a while with the city. So I thought if we gave, it's a may, it's not a shall, but I thought if we included that it would clearly provide support if the city ever decided to do that.
Now, Debbie, this is the thing we want to be clear about. This statement would be true under the the existing third class city code, right? Because I was under the I was told that the third class city code did not allow for, my area was fire department, did not allow for part-time, but we do have part-time firefighters, but that, and police officers, but because this, if it isn't in the current third class city code as a possibility, then this would create a firestorm that we're putting this in here. But if it's already in the third class city code, then we need to be prepared to say to people, either the third class city code or the home rule charter would allow for part-time police officers if the feeling was that was a good way for the city to go.
Yeah. So I believe that the third class city code allows you to do that. Michael can weigh in. I've also talked to Bill Gamble at great length about this, and he agrees that part-time police, Bill's a police consultant that Michael and I both know and have used for decades. He also believes that it's perfectly allowable, but he also believes that they have to be included in civil service rules and regulations, because that is one thing that the third class city code does say, is that all officers must be civil service qualified in third class cities. So yeah, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so I can't give you a legal opinion, but it is my belief. No, we just won a arbitration award in Aliquippa, where that was a topic and it was upheld. It went to Common Pleas Court and it was upheld that they could use part-time police officers. So as
Okay.
far as I'm concerned, it's allowable. Unless someone tells me differently.
There's a general statement in the third class city code at the beginning that talks, the category is called appointment, number, rank, compensation, and qualifications of police officers. And the general rule is council shall fix by ordinance the number, grades, and compensation of the members of the city police force who shall be appointed in accordance with the civil service provisions of this chapter. This provision, I think, does give, again, I'm not a lawyer either, but, and I've seen this in other cities that I work in, or I advise and work in from a staff member of the department. They do have part-time police. They've had part-time police for years, and it's collectively bargained. They're through civil service. So I'm siding on the line of you can have part-time police, just as you have part-time firefighters. A lot of
So
places.
Doug, I think, you know, what Michael and I are saying, and you may want to check with your solicitor, but you know, again, we've arbitrated this and it's gone to court. But as far as I'm concerned, and under the third class city code or the charter, you would be allowed to appoint part-time police officers.
Or even
However,
civil service regs
but
too.
it has to be, right, it has to be in your civil service rules and regs.
I think the issue for us, and I'm not certain of this, may be collective bargaining. It may be not a possibility under the current collective bargaining.
Yeah, and that's exactly the issue that we had in Aliquippa.
Yeah.
Was it was not in the collective bargaining agreement, and it was being
Yep.
proposed by management to include it.
How did you fix the issue in Aliquippa? Or how did you address
The
that?
union, so they went to arbitration under Act 111 during bargaining, and the arbitrator awarded the city the ability to use part-time police officers. The union appealed it to Common Pleas Court, and the court also upheld it and ruled that they were allowed to use part-time police officers. Now, it did not go to Commonwealth Court or any higher, and I don't know if there's any other case law, but at least in Aliquippa, it was upheld. They did not appeal it, and so the city currently has the ability to use part-time police officers.
That sentence, or part of a sentence, adopted by the city before and after the effective date of the charter and consistent with the laws of the Commonwealth. What's that mean?
So it means that currently, when the charter is adopted, it's not in the civil service rules and regs, right? Because you have not added that as a part of your civil service rules and regulations. However, what this says is that those rules and regs if they're adopted by the city before or after the effective date of the charter, and they're consistent with the laws of the Commonwealth, then you may appoint the part-time officers. So basically, those conditions have to be met before you can appoint, before the city manager can appoint part-time officers. It would have to be changed with the civil service rules and regs. Your changes or language must be consistent with the laws of the Commonwealth.
which also which also I think implies collective bargaining laws that apply to police and paid fire. But here we're talking about part-time police, which is Act 111 of 1968, which is the binding arbitration statute that basically says that if you reach an impasse after a specified period of negotiations, either party can request a binding arbitration proceeding that of any issues that are still unresolved, which could be part-time police. And it gets resolved, as Debbie was saying, in Aliquippa through a neutral third-party arbitrator. Or it could be voluntarily collectively bargained through the normal negotiation process, rather than having it be taken to a neutral third-party arbitrator. So right now, it sounds like the Beaver Falls Police collective bargaining agreement would have to be changed through the collective bargaining process to incorporate a provision that would allow part-time police officers, that would then necessitate a revision of the civil service regulations for the civil service appointment being deployed to hire part-timers.
I
When
think
we
that's that.
Okay. Scott, I was
I-
gonna just say, when we interviewed the police chief, didn't he say he was not a big fan of?
That's correct. No, they
ne-
don't
ne-
like,
They never are. No, I
Yeah.
understand that. And this doesn't require you to do that.
to
However, if you were in a financial bind, or if you felt the need to supplement your current staffing with additional part-time officers, for instance, to help you with overtime, or, for some other reason, this language would give you the opportunity to do that. It does not require the city to do it.
What about in cases of emergency?
Well, that's 6.5. I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
because that's another, that thing that, and this is in this third class city code also. So this kind of just supplements, although it gives in the third class city code, it gives that power to the mayor. This basically says that the city manager may appoint special police with full police powers and jurisdiction for the duration of an emergency in which the safety and welfare of the city and the public is endangered. So this gives you 6.4 and 6.5 really give you a couple options here for the city, in that, the part-time police officers are more permanent appointments to supplement staff. 6.5 is when there's an emergency. During the duration of an emergency, you can appoint special police. So they're kind of, well, they are two separate and distinct types of appointment.
I would suggest a qualifying or clarifying word in 6.5 to say the duration of a declared emergency. That normally would be by the mayor.
I like that.
Because it has a fixed period of time. Right now, the third class city code basically says that, the special police, we'll call them, serve for a period designated by council not to exceed 30 days and whose compensation shall be fixed by council.
Anyway, I'm going to add a word here too. I'm going to say qualified special police, because you can't just appoint anyone. There would have to be, someone who is a qualified with full police powers. So there are certain, qualifications and certifications around that. Any
Right.
other thoughts?
Yeah, special distinguishes between part-time, full-time. Special police is just that, for a special, unique circumstance.
So this is all that I included in the police department for the charter. Obviously, you have as I said, a complete ordinance establishing the department and the ranks and the staffing and civil service rules and regs. You have collective bargaining. But these are kind of special things around the police chief, around who does the appointment, and around these two part-time and special police that I thought they brought a lot of value to the charter. Okay, let's talk about fire department. This mirrors similar language.
The answer. Sorry, I was talking to Michael in the room.
Okay, that's okay. Again, it's pretty much similar language. There's a few things that I highlighted. So the fire chief would be appointed by the manager with advice and consent of council. We talked through that. The person appointed as fire chief shall have management experience and a background in the field of firefighting, fire science, appointed for an indefinite period of time. Again, I'm assuming that you would want this to be, take this out for any reason. Or,
Yeah,
with
make
the
it match
consent.
the
This-
one under the police.
yeah, this would be four members of council. We didn't talk about this, but this language is in the police too, not participating in any political or election campaign other than exercise his or her own right of suffrage. I'm assuming everyone's good with that.
That's common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, all the positions would be appointed by the manager from the list of candidates, civil service rules and regs. We already had that discussion. Part-time firefighters, this would be a city manager appointment of part-time firefighters, again, in accordance with civil service rules and regs. I guess my question, and Doug may know this, are the part-timers, do they go through civil service before they're appointed by the city? I don't know that to be true or not.
Yeah, I don't, I know the full-time hires are obviously. I'm not sure about the part-time.
And again, I don't know, Michael, you just read that section about fire. Do they need to be civil service? Was that same language in the fire?
Well, let's see here. You talking about whether part-timers need to be hired through civil service?
Yeah, I don't know that it speaks to part-timers or
doesn't.
distinguishes between full and part-time.
It does not distinguish between full and part-timers. Let's see here. Election appointment officer. Yes, it talks about paid fire bureau, election of officers and companies. You have a paid fire department, or as it's called here, a paid fire bureau. And it indicates that you do the election or appointment of the officers and companies belonging to the fire bureau by ordinance in accordance with civil service provisions where applicable.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think for consistency and competency, it should link civil service procedures.
The only reason I ask is because this would put an additional requirement that the city currently, I guess we have to ask that question, Doug, and see what we currently do, because the way this is written, that would put additional requirements on the city to make sure that their part-timers are civil service.
And we don't want to do that. There's no need to. It should just stay the same, whatever they're currently doing, unless there's some legal reason.
Well, the minimum is that they have the training, they've met qualifications, you know, that they
Yeah.
met their certifications, et cetera.
Yep. Right.
That's key over civil service.
But and a lot of paid departments do require that they take the civil service exam, even the part-timers. And I guess the advantage of that is that if an opening comes up for a full-timer, they can be promoted.
Yep.
Where they would not be able to do that without taking the civil service exam if they are not civil service qualified. So that
Yep.
would be the advantage. So we should have that discussion.
And I've seen job advertisements for full timers that basically say that you know that you need to be, you know, that eligible applicants would already be civil service certified, so to speak, or civil service employees.
So we need to return to that question at our next meeting with some clarification about how we currently do that. And then 7.4, again, I don't know the answer to this. So the third class city code applies for provides for the position of fire marshal
Yes, it
in
does.
addition to fire chief. And I don't know what the city currently does. So I kept this language in there for now, but there are provisions in the third class city code. We don't have to include this. And I guess we want to be probably consistent with what you're currently doing.
I don't believe, I mean, I've never heard of fire marshal, and I don't know what that person's role would be as compared to the fire chief. So unless something, you know, unless this is there and I just somehow don't know about it, I just think we would strike it and not again make this issue any point of contention.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
who enforces your fire code? Your fire chief and fire officers?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty cool right now is that we just recently we put the fire chief in charge of not just fire department, but the code office as well. And now the code officer and our fire department people as code people. So that making the code situation tons better, much more professional. So maybe that's what I could call our fire chief, Mark Stowe. Maybe I should call him. Is that what it means? A fire marshal is looking at fire code issues.
Yes.
Is that what they do?
It's
Yeah,
in
under-
section 12.104, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, what 12104 fire marshal, the powers basically is inspect all construction or buildings. It goes
Yeah.
on to say about for the prevention, containment, or investigation of fire and fire hazards.
Yep.
As to construction or buildings and as to their contents or occupancies. So that's the essence of it. So
Yeah,
it sounds
that's
like
what
it would be duplication.
Yeah.
If you have a fire marshal.
That's correct. The
Or-
code office is doing that. And then, but the cool thing about it for us right now is the fire department and the code office are working together.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess since there are specific duties in the third class city code, I wonder if we want to say that the council may by ordinance provide for the creation of the office who may be a member, either the fire chief or a member of the fire department. I mean, it's interesting that it does have all those specific duties in the third class city code, but we can talk about it. It doesn't have to necessarily be a new position. It can be a current position that basically allows.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mark about that. What, you
Yeah.
know, have they ever thought about having a fire marshal, or maybe he'll tell me that somebody is a fire marshal.
Yeah, I mean, they may already have somebody that's designated as a fire marshal, but I think we should at least look at it because it does seem to give them some authority and responsibility that we might be interested, the city might be interested in.
Yep.
I know the state has fire marshals that they'll send in for investigation of fires.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yep.
that's the other thing they do is typically when there's a fire, they,
The county may also,
They may require special certification too.
yes, yes. State and county could have fire marshals.
well, I'm a few minutes over our allotted time. Do we have any other comments or issues that people wanted to discuss or raise?
Well, as always, we've been enlightened and
Yeah,
educated.
your work.
That was a great discussion. You guys have really contributed, and I'll clean this up and get it ready for everyone. The next, I shouldn't even announce what the next section is because everyone will tune me out. It's my favorite section of all. It's finance. And we will be talking about budgets and contracts and purchasing and all of those things that will be part of the budget and finance section. So I don't think we'll get through it all. I'll try and prepare a bite of it. So I think it'll take probably take a couple meetings.
That'll be May
I just
6th.
remembered I'm going to be out of the country in 2 weeks.
I won't be as well.
I think the whole commission was taking that trip.
Are we talking Thursday, May 6th?
Yeah,
Yeah,
April, wait, this is
Yeah, it
April.
will be
My
May.
God, where did the time go?
I know.
Yeah.
Hey,
We got to get this thing finished. So I hope people are not out of the country and that they'll be, we'll have a quorum. That would be good.
Good thing we weren't shooting to be
No
on the
excuse,
ballot
you
in
can
May.
come
We
from
wouldn't
anywhere.
make it.
Okay.
I know it is my favorite topic. So at least I'll be excited about it.
I like it too.
I know. Michael and I are probably the only ones who love it.
It's one of the key elements of the charter.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So that's it. I don't have anything else. It was a
Great.
pleasure seeing everyone. I thought it was a good discussion.
We just need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Make a
So
motion.
moved.
Oh, you said it at the same time.
Second.
Jerry and Doug. Okay, so Jerry gets it.
Jerry and Doug.
Yep. Thank you for all your hard work. It's appreciated.
Neil, I'm on the way.
It's great.
Okay, Mike.
You guys are great.
All right.
Okay,
see
thanks a
ya.
lot.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Have a
See ya.
Night.
Night.